The social worker's hands trembled as she pushed open the apartment door. The smell hit her first, a mixture of rotting food, unwashed bodies, and something else she couldn't identify. Sarah Martinez had been doing this job for 12 years, but nothing had prepared her for what she was about to discover. The anonymous tip had come in 3 days earlier. A neighbor had called, worried about strange sounds coming from apartment 4B and the fact that nobody had seen the children in weeks. The building was old, paint peeling from the walls with broken mailboxes hanging loose in the lobby. Sarah had seen poverty before, but this felt different. She called out as she entered, announcing herself as required by protocol. The silence that greeted her was deafening. The living room was nearly empty except for a torn couch and scattered trash across the floor. Empty bottles and food containers created a maze she had to navigate carefully. The windows were covered with thick blankets, blocking out most of the daylight. Moving deeper into the apartment, Sarah noticed the temperature. It was freezing despite the summer heat outside. The heating had been turned off probably for months. Her breath formed small clouds as she searched each room methodically. The kitchen was a disaster zone with no working appliances and cupboards hanging open, completely bare. Then she heard it. A tiny sound, almost like a kitten mewing. Following the noise, she discovered a small bedroom at the back of the apartment. The door was slightly ajar and she pushed it open slowly. What she saw inside would haunt her for the rest of her life. 2 small girls, appearing to be around 6 years old, were huddled together on a mattress on the floor. They were so thin that their bones were clearly visible through their pale skin. Their hair was matted and dirty, and they wore clothes that were far too big, hanging off their tiny frames like rags. Their eyes were enormous in their gaunt faces, filled with a mixture of fear and exhaustion. The girls didn't move when Sarah entered. They simply stared at her with those haunting eyes, too weak or too frightened to react. Sarah immediately radioed for an ambulance, her voice cracking as she tried to describe the scene professionally. These children were clearly on the brink of death from severe malnutrition. As she waited for help to arrive, Sarah noticed more disturbing details. There was no food anywhere in the apartment. The girls appeared to have been surviving on nothing but water from a leaky faucet in the bathroom. Their lips were cracked and dry, and their breathing was shallow and labored. The twins, for it was clear they were identical, held hands even in their weakened state. They had formed a protective bond that had somehow kept them alive through this nightmare. Sarah later learned that they had been taking care of each other, sharing whatever tiny scraps of food they could find, and keeping each other warm during the cold nights. When the paramedics arrived, they worked quickly but gently. The girls were so fragile that even lifting them onto stretchers required extreme care. Their weight was shockingly low, barely 30 pounds each when they should have weighed at least 50. The medical team exchanged worried glances as they prepared the children for transport to the hospital. As the ambulance pulled away, Sarah remained in the apartment to gather evidence and search for any relatives or guardians. What she discovered in her investigation would reveal a story of neglect so severe that it would shock even experienced child protection workers. The girls had been living alone for weeks, possibly months, surviving against impossible odds. The apartment told a story of gradual abandonment. Old mail piled up near the door showed that bills hadn't been paid in months. Neighbors later admitted they had heard crying in the early weeks but assumed it was normal family drama. Nobody had realized that 2 young children were fighting for their lives just a few feet away. Sarah found a few torn photographs showing the girls when they were healthier, smiling and playing like normal children. The contrast with their current condition was heartbreaking. Someone had clearly cared for them once, but something had gone terribly wrong. The search for answers was just beginning, and Sarah knew that solving this case would require uncovering painful truths about how society's most vulnerable members could slip through the cracks so completely. Dr. Emily Chen had been working in pediatric emergency medicine for 15 years, but the sight of the twin girls being wheeled into her hospital left her speechless. The paramedics briefed her quickly as the children were transferred to examination tables. Both girls were unconscious now, their tiny bodies having given up the fight to stay awake after being moved from their hiding place. The medical team moved with practiced efficiency, but everyone could feel the gravity of the situation. These children were minutes away from complete organ failure. Dr. Chen immediately ordered IV fluids, but even this simple procedure was complicated by the girls' condition. Their veins were so small and weak that finding a good insertion point took several attempts. The initial examination revealed the full extent of their suffering. Both girls showed signs of severe dehydration, malnutrition, and muscle wasting. Their body temperatures were dangerously low and their heart rates were irregular. More concerning were the signs that this neglect had been ongoing for a very long time. Their growth had been stunted and they appeared much younger than their actual age of 7 years old. Blood tests confirmed Dr. Chen's worst fears. The girls had dangerously low levels of essential vitamins and minerals. Their protein levels were so depleted that their bodies had begun breaking down muscle tissue for energy. This was a condition usually seen in famine victims, not children living in a modern American city. As the medical team worked to stabilize the twins, a clearer picture of their survival story began to emerge. The girls had somehow managed to ration tiny amounts of food and water over many weeks. Evidence suggested they had been eating whatever they could find. Bits of stale bread, scraps from the floor, even paper when nothing else was available. One of the nurses, Maria Santos, was assigned to stay with the girls around the clock. As they slowly regained consciousness over the following days, Maria began to understand the remarkable bond between them. They spoke to each other in whispers, using a language that seemed to be partly English and partly sounds only they understood. They had developed their own way of communicating during their isolation. The girl who appeared slightly stronger, later identified as Emma, had clearly been taking care of her sister Lily, even in their weakened state. Emma would refuse food or water until she was sure Lily had received her share first. This protective instinct had likely kept both girls alive when giving up would have been easier. Dr. Chen consulted with colleagues across the country about the best treatment approach. The girls needed nutrition, but their systems were so damaged that regular food could actually harm them. They had to be fed through carefully controlled IV nutrition, with tiny amounts of bland foods introduced gradually over many days. The psychological trauma was equally concerning. Both girls showed signs of severe anxiety and depression. They rarely made eye contact with adults and seemed to expect punishment or abandonment at any moment. Child psychologist Dr. James Walker was brought in to assess their mental state and begin the long process of healing their emotional wounds. Security was placed outside their hospital room after media attention began to grow. News of the discovery had leaked, and reporters were trying to get information about the case. The hospital administration was determined to protect the girls' privacy during this critical recovery period. Meanwhile, law enforcement was working to piece together how this tragedy had occurred. Detective Michael Rodriguez was assigned to lead the investigation. He spent hours interviewing neighbors, reviewing security footage, and searching for any relatives who might have information about the girls' family situation. The breakthrough came when a neighbor remembered seeing a woman leaving the apartment building with suitcases several months earlier. Security cameras from a nearby store confirmed that someone matching the description of the girl's mother had been seen in the area in March, but not since then. The trail was getting colder with each passing day. As the girls grew stronger physically, their personalities began to emerge. Emma showed signs of being naturally outgoing and curious, while Lily was more cautious and observant. Despite everything they had endured, both girls displayed a remarkable resilience and an obvious intelligence that had helped them survive. The hospital staff found themselves emotionally invested in the twins' recovery. Nurses would spend extra time reading to them, and doctors would bring small toys and books from home. The girls had never experienced such kindness from adults, and their gradual trust in their caregivers became a crucial part of their healing process. After 2 weeks in intensive care, both girls were stable enough to be moved to a regular pediatric ward. This was a major milestone, but everyone knew that their physical recovery was just the beginning of a much longer journey toward healing and finding a permanent, safe home. Detective Michael Rodriguez sat in his car outside the rundown apartment building, studying the case file for the 100th time. 3 weeks had passed since the twins were found, and despite extensive investigation, he still had more questions than answers. The girls were recovering well in the hospital, but the mystery of what happened to their mother and how they ended up alone remained unsolved. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Mrs. Chen, an elderly neighbor from the floor below, finally came forward with information she had been too frightened to share earlier. She revealed that she had known something was wrong for months but was afraid to get involved. Mrs. Chen spoke broken English, but her story was clear and heartbreaking. According to Mrs. Chen, the girl's mother, Rebecca Thompson, had been struggling with severe mental health issues for over a year. Rebecca was a single mother who had been doing her best to care for Emma and Lily, but her condition had been deteriorating steadily. Mrs. Chen had often heard crying and shouting from the apartment above, followed by long periods of silence. The investigation revealed that Rebecca had lost her job at a local grocery store 8 months earlier due to her erratic behavior and frequent absences. With no income and mounting bills, she had been evicted from their previous apartment and forced to move to the current building with help from a local charity. Rodriguez discovered that Rebecca had made several attempts to get help from social services, but the overwhelmed system had failed her. She had been placed on waiting lists for mental health services, housing assistance, and food stamps. By the time help became available, her condition had worsened significantly. The turning point appeared to have happened in early spring. Neighbors reported that Rebecca had become increasingly paranoid and confused. She believed that people were trying to take her children away and began isolating herself and the girls from everyone. She stopped answering the door, refused help from neighbors, and eventually stopped leaving the apartment entirely. Security footage from nearby businesses helped Rodriguez piece together the timeline. Rebecca had been seen making increasingly desperate trips to local stores, sometimes with the girls and sometimes alone. Store clerks remembered her because she would count coins carefully to buy small amounts of food, often appearing confused and distressed. The final piece of the puzzle came from Rebecca's former coworker at the grocery store. She revealed that Rebecca had confided in her about hearing voices telling her that the world was dangerous and that she needed to protect her daughters by keeping them hidden. This matched the symptoms of severe untreated psychosis that mental health experts had suspected. Rodriguez tracked down Rebecca's last known movements to a shelter across town. Staff there confirmed that a woman matching her description had arrived alone in March, claiming she needed to hide from people who were following her. She had stayed for 3 nights before disappearing without explanation, leaving behind a small bag of belongings. The investigation revealed a tragic pattern of a mother trying desperately to care for her children while battling an illness she didn't understand. Rebecca had genuinely believed she was protecting Emma and Lily by keeping them locked away from a world she perceived as threatening. In her confused mental state, she had convinced herself that someone would bring them food and help. Mental health professionals who reviewed the case explained that Rebecca likely experienced what's called a psychotic break, where her grip on reality became severely compromised. During such episodes, people can make decisions that seem logical to them, but are actually dangerous or harmful. The search for Rebecca intensified after this new information came to light. Rodriguez coordinated with other agencies and put out bulletins to hospitals, shelters, and mental health facilities across the region. Finding Rebecca became crucial not only for justice, but also for the girl's emotional healing and future placement decisions. Meanwhile, Child Services faced the difficult question of what would happen to Emma and Lily once they were physically recovered. With their mother missing and possibly dangerous to herself, and no known relatives willing or able to care for them, the girls would likely need to be placed in foster care or put up for adoption. The case attracted attention from child welfare advocates who pointed out the failures in the system that had allowed this tragedy to occur. Rebecca had sought help multiple times but fell through the cracks of an overwhelmed mental health system. The girls had suffered because no one had followed up when the family situation became desperate. As Rodriguez continued his investigation, he began to understand that this wasn't a simple case of neglect or abuse. It was a complex tragedy involving mental illness, poverty, and system failures that had combined to create a perfect storm of danger for 2 innocent children. The detective found himself personally invested in finding answers, not just for the sake of justice but because he had visited Emma and Lily in the hospital and seen their resilience despite everything they had endured. These little girls deserved to know what had happened to their mother and to have closure as they began their journey toward a new life. The call came at 2:30 in the morning. Detective Rodriguez was pulled from a deep sleep by his phone buzzing insistently on the nightstand. A security guard at the city's largest hospital had found a woman wandering the parking garage, confused and asking about her daughters. When police arrived, they immediately recognized her from the missing person reports that had been circulating for weeks. Rebecca Thompson was barely recognizable as the woman in the family photos found in the apartment. She had lost significant weight, and her dark hair was now streaked with gray. Her clothes were dirty and torn, suggesting she had been living on the streets. Most concerning were her eyes. They held the distant, unfocused look of someone who had completely lost touch with reality. When Rodriguez arrived at the hospital, Rebecca was sitting in a secure room with a mental health crisis counselor. She kept asking about Emma and Lily, insisting that she had left them with a babysitter and needed to get back to them. The counselor explained that Rebecca seemed to have no memory of the past several months and appeared to believe her daughters were still toddlers. Dr. Patricia Williams, the hospital's chief psychiatrist, was called in to evaluate Rebecca's condition. After several hours of assessment, Dr. Williams confirmed what everyone suspected. Rebecca was experiencing a severe psychotic episode with significant memory gaps. She had likely been wandering the city for months, unable to care for herself or remember what had happened to her children. The reunion between Rebecca and her daughters was carefully planned by the medical team. Both girls had been asking about their mother, but they also showed signs of fear and confusion when the topic was discussed. Emma, the more protective twin, had told nurses that sometimes their mommy would forget things and say scary words that didn't make sense. When Rebecca was finally brought to see Emma and Lily, the meeting was both heartbreaking and hopeful. Despite her mental state, Rebecca immediately recognized her daughters and began crying when she saw how thin and pale they still were. The girls approached her cautiously, as if unsure whether this was really their mother or someone who looked like her. Dr. Williams observed the interaction carefully, noting that Rebecca's presence seemed to calm the girls even though they remained wary. Emma took charge as usual, holding Lily's hand and speaking softly to their mother in the special language they had developed during their isolation. Rebecca responded to their voices, even though she couldn't follow most of their conversation. The medical team faced a complex challenge in treating Rebecca while also considering what was best for the twins. Rebecca would require long-term psychiatric care and medication to stabilize her condition. Even with treatment, there was no guarantee that she would ever be well enough to safely care for her daughters again. Child psychologist Dr. James Walker worked with both the girls and Rebecca to understand their relationship and assess whether eventual reunification might be possible. He discovered that before her illness became severe, Rebecca had been a loving and devoted mother. The girls clearly adored her despite the trauma they had experienced. Emma and Lily began visiting their mother daily once she was moved to the psychiatric ward. These visits became a crucial part of everyone's healing process. Rebecca started responding better to treatment when she could see her daughters regularly. The girls began to relax and show more of their natural personalities when they felt their mother was safe and being cared for. The legal situation remained complicated. Rebecca was not competent to make decisions about her daughter's care, and there were no other family members who could step in. A court-appointed guardian was assigned to represent the girls' interests while Rebecca's treatment continued. Social worker Sarah Martinez worked closely with all three family members to develop a long-term plan. She coordinated with doctors, lawyers, and potential foster families to ensure that whatever decisions were made would prioritize the girls' safety and well-being, while preserving their connection to their mother. As weeks passed, Rebecca's condition gradually improved with proper medication and therapy. She began to remember pieces of what had happened, though many details remained unclear. The guilt and shame she felt when she realized what her daughters had endured was overwhelming, but her doctors assured her that her illness, not personal failure, had caused the tragedy. The girls' physical recovery continued as well. They had gained weight, and their energy levels were returning to normal. Emma was starting to act more like a typical 7-year-old, playing with toys and laughing at silly jokes. Lily remained quieter, but was beginning to trust the adults around her and even smiled occasionally. The hospital staff had become like an extended family to the twins. Nurses would bring them small gifts, and doctors would spend extra time answering their endless questions about everything from how the elevators worked to why the lights in the ceiling were so bright. This positive attention was helping to rebuild their trust in adults. Media attention continued to follow the case, with many people expressing interest in helping the family. Donations poured in to cover medical expenses, and several families had inquired about adoption if Rebecca was unable to care for the girls. However, the legal and medical teams were focused on taking things slowly and making decisions based on what was truly best for everyone involved. The question that haunted everyone was whether this family could ever be whole again. Rebecca's love for her daughters was undeniable, but love alone might not be enough to ensure their safety and stability in the future. 6 months after the twins were found, a family court judge faced one of the most difficult decisions of her career. Judge Margaret Foster had been reviewing cases involving Emma and Lily Thompson for weeks, consulting with medical experts, social workers, and child advocates to determine what would be best for the girls' future. Rebecca's condition had stabilized significantly with proper treatment and medication. She was living in a supervised residential facility where she attended daily therapy sessions and learned coping strategies for managing her mental illness. The transformation was remarkable. She was lucid, engaged, and desperately wanted to rebuild her relationship with her daughters. However, the medical team remained cautious about Rebecca's ability to provide full-time care for the twins. Dr. Williams explained to the court that while Rebecca had made tremendous progress, her type of mental illness could be unpredictable. She would need ongoing support and monitoring for the rest of her life. Emma and Lily had been placed in temporary foster care with the Martinez family while the legal proceedings continued. Maria and Carlos Martinez were experienced foster parents who had opened their home to dozens of children over the years. They understood the special needs of traumatized children and had worked patiently to help the twins feel safe and loved. The girls had thrived in the Martinez household. They attended a special school program designed for children who had experienced trauma, where teachers understood their unique needs and learning challenges. Emma's natural leadership qualities were emerging in positive ways as she helped other children in her class. Lily had discovered a love for drawing and would spend hours creating colorful pictures of flowers and animals. Both girls still visited their mother 3 times a week at the residential facility. These visits had become precious moments for all 3 of them. Rebecca would read stories to the girls, help them with homework, and listen as they told her about their new experiences. The twins clearly loved their mother and looked forward to seeing her. The court also heard from Dr. Walker, who had been working with the family since the beginning. He testified that the bond between Rebecca and her daughters was strong and healing, but he also expressed concerns about the girls' need for stability and predictability. They had already experienced so much disruption in their young lives. An innovative solution was proposed by the team of professionals working with the family. Instead of forcing an all-or-nothing decision, they suggested a gradual reunification plan that would allow Rebecca to slowly take on more responsibility for her daughters while maintaining the safety net of the foster family and professional support. The plan would begin with Rebecca moving to a supervised apartment where she could have overnight visits with Emma and Lily on weekends. If these visits went well for several months, the girls could spend longer periods with their mother. Throughout this process, social workers would monitor the family closely and provide support services. Judge Foster was intrigued by this approach, but wanted to hear directly from the twins about their feelings. In a private meeting in her chambers, she spoke with Emma and Lily about what they wanted for their future. Emma, speaking for both herself and her sister, as she often did, said they loved their foster family but missed their mommy and wanted to live with her again. Lily, who rarely spoke to adults outside her immediate circle, surprised everyone by drawing a picture for the judge. The drawing showed 3 figures holding hands, herself, Emma, and their mother, standing in front of a house with the sun shining overhead. It was a powerful statement about her hopes for the future. The Martinez family supported the reunification plan, understanding that their role had always been temporary. They had grown to love Emma and Lily deeply, but recognized that the girls belonged with their mother if it could be done safely. Maria Martinez told the court that she would be honored to continue supporting the family during the transition. Rebecca testified on her own behalf, acknowledging the severity of her illness and the harm it had caused her daughters. She spoke about her commitment to taking her medication, attending therapy, and doing whatever was necessary to be the mother Emma and Lily deserved. Her testimony was emotional, but showed remarkable insight into her condition and its impact. The judge also considered input from the community that had rallied around the family. Teachers, neighbors, and even some of the hospital staff who had cared for the girls submitted letters supporting the reunification plan. They had witnessed the genuine love between mother and daughters and believed that with proper support, the family could heal together. After weeks of deliberation, Judge Foster announced her decision. She approved the gradual reunification plan with strict conditions and ongoing supervision. Rebecca would be required to maintain her treatment regimen, live in approved housing, and allow regular check-ins from social workers. The girls would continue their therapy and maintain their connection to the Martinez family as an additional support system. The courtroom was emotional as the decision was announced. Rebecca wept with relief and gratitude, while Emma and Lily held hands and smiled at their mother. The Martinez family hugged the girls, promising that they would always be there for them no matter what. Social worker Sarah Martinez, who had been involved with the case from the beginning, felt cautiously optimistic about the plan. She had seen too many situations where good intentions weren't enough. But she also believed in the power of family bonds and proper support systems to overcome even the most difficult circumstances. The real work was just beginning. The success of this plan would depend on everyone involved: Rebecca, the girls, the foster family, medical professionals, and social workers, working together to create a new kind of family structure that prioritized healing and safety above all else. 1 year later, Rebecca Thompson stood in the kitchen of her small apartment, carefully preparing breakfast for Emma and Lily. The morning routine had become sacred to her, measuring out the cereal, cutting fresh fruit, and making sure each glass of milk was filled to exactly the right level. These simple acts of care represented everything she had almost lost and was determined never to take for granted again. The weekend visits had evolved into something more permanent 6 months earlier. After a year of supervised visits, therapy sessions, and careful monitoring, the court had agreed that Rebecca was stable enough to have her daughters live with her full-time. The transition hadn't been without challenges, but the family had faced each obstacle together. Emma had become Rebecca's unofficial helper and reminder system. The 8-year-old had developed an impressive understanding of her mother's condition and would gently remind Rebecca to take her medication or call Dr. Williams when she seemed stressed. This responsibility might have been too much for some children, but Emma seemed to thrive in her role as protector and helper. Lily had blossomed in ways that surprised everyone. The quiet, observant child had discovered a talent for music during their time with the Martinez family, and Rebecca had enrolled her in piano lessons at a community center. The apartment was often filled with the sound of Lily practicing simple songs, her fingers moving carefully across the second-hand keyboard Rebecca had bought with money from her new part-time job. Rebecca worked 20 hours a week at a local nonprofit organization that provided services to families affected by mental illness. Her supervisor, Mrs. Patterson, was understanding about Rebecca's need for flexibility and regular therapy appointments. The job gave Rebecca purpose and helped her feel like she was contributing something positive to her community. The support system that had been put in place during the reunification process remained active and vital. The Martinez family visited every Sunday for dinner, and Maria Martinez had become like a grandmother to the twins. These visits provided additional stability for the girls and gave Rebecca trusted adults to talk to about parenting challenges. Dr. Williams continued to monitor Rebecca's mental health through monthly appointments and medication adjustments. The psychiatrist had become more than just a doctor. She was a trusted advisor who helped Rebecca navigate the complexities of raising children while managing a chronic mental illness. Their relationship was built on honesty and trust, which had been essential to Rebecca's recovery. The girls attended the same specialized school they had been enrolled in during their foster care period. Their teachers reported steady progress in both academic and social areas. Emma had become a mentor to newer students who had experienced trauma, showing remarkable empathy for children who were struggling. Lily's artistic abilities had flourished, and her drawings now decorated not just the apartment, but also the school hallways. Detective Rodriguez, who had become personally invested in the family's story, still checked in occasionally. He had been promoted to sergeant but never forgot the case that had affected him so deeply. Seeing Emma and Lily healthy and happy with their mother was one of the most satisfying outcomes of his career. The apartment where they now lived was nothing fancy, but it was filled with love and stability. Rebecca had learned to decorate on a budget, and the walls were covered with Lily's artwork, Emma's school certificates, and family photos from their new life together. A small corner of the living room was designated as a study area, where both girls did their homework each evening. Bedtime had become a special ritual for the family. Rebecca would read to both girls, often choosing books about families who had overcome challenges together. Emma and Lily would take turns sharing the best part of their day, and Rebecca would remind them how proud she was of their strength and kindness. These quiet moments together helped heal the memories of their darkest days. The trauma of their experience would always be part of their story, but it no longer defined their daily lives. Emma and Lily were learning that they could trust the adults in their lives to keep them safe and fed. Rebecca was discovering that with proper treatment and support, she could be the mother she had always wanted to be. Financial challenges remained a constant concern. Rebecca's part-time job provided enough income for basic needs, but there was little left over for extras. The family qualified for assistance programs that helped with food and healthcare costs, and the nonprofit community continued to provide support through clothing drives and holiday gift programs. The girls had learned valuable lessons about resilience and the importance of asking for help when needed. They no longer hoarded food or feared that adults would abandon them. Instead, they were developing healthy relationships with teachers, neighbors, and family friends who had become part of their extended support network. Rebecca often reflected on how different their lives might have been if she had received proper mental health treatment earlier. She had become an advocate for other families facing similar challenges, speaking at community meetings about the importance of mental health services and early intervention programs. The success of their reunification had become a model for other families in similar situations. Social workers and mental health professionals from other cities had visited to learn about the collaborative approach that had made their healing possible. Rebecca took pride in knowing that their story might help other children avoid the trauma that Emma and Lily had experienced. As the second anniversary of their rescue approached, Rebecca found herself reflecting on the incredible journey her family had taken. The date that had once represented their darkest moment was now becoming a celebration of survival and healing. The girls had suggested having a party to thank everyone who had helped them, an idea that filled Rebecca with pride at their generous hearts. The transformation in all three of them was remarkable. Rebecca's hair had returned to its natural color, and the haunted look in her eyes had been replaced by warmth and determination. She had gained healthy weight and carried herself with the confidence of someone who had faced their worst fears and emerged stronger. Emma and Lily were thriving in ways that exceeded everyone's expectations. Emma had been selected for the school's leadership program, where she helped younger students adapt to their new environment. Her natural protective instincts had been channeled into positive mentoring relationships that benefited everyone involved. Lily's artistic talents had caught the attention of a local art teacher who offered free lessons in exchange for helping with younger children's art classes. The shy girl who had once barely spoken was now teaching other children how to express their feelings through drawing and painting. The apartment had become a gathering place for other families who were navigating similar challenges. Rebecca had started an informal support group that met monthly, providing a safe space for parents with mental health conditions to share experiences and strategies. The twins had made friends with children from these families, creating a network of understanding and acceptance. Despite all the progress, Rebecca remained vigilant about maintaining the structure and support systems that had made their success possible. She never missed a therapy appointment or forgot to take her medication. The fear of returning to that dark place where she had lost herself and nearly lost her daughters was a powerful motivator for staying committed to her treatment. The legal supervision had been gradually reduced, but Rebecca welcomed the continued check-ins from social workers. She had learned that accepting help was not a sign of weakness but a demonstration of strength and wisdom. The village of people who had helped raise her daughters had become permanent fixtures in their lives. As they prepared for bed each night, Rebecca would look at her daughters and feel overwhelmed with gratitude. Emma and Lily had not only survived an unimaginable ordeal, but had emerged as compassionate, resilient young people who understood the value of family, community, and hope. Their bond with each other remained unbreakable, but it was no longer born of desperation and fear. Instead, it was founded on love, trust, and the security of knowing that they would never have to face danger alone again. 5 years had passed since that terrible day when Sarah Martinez first pushed open the door to apartment 4B. The anniversary was no longer marked with sadness, but had become a day of celebration and gratitude that the family called their second birthday, the day their new life began. Emma and Lily Thompson were now 12 years old, bright and confident middle school students who had transformed their painful past into a source of strength and purpose. They had become advocates for children in foster care and frequently spoke at community events about the importance of mental health awareness and support for struggling families. Rebecca had completed her college degree in social work, a goal she had set for herself during those early days of recovery. She now worked full-time at the same nonprofit organization where she had started part-time, coordinating services for families affected by mental illness. Her personal experience gave her unique insight and credibility when working with parents who were facing similar challenges. The family had moved to a larger apartment in a better neighborhood, but they had chosen to stay close to the Martinez family and the support network that had been so crucial to their healing. The new place had room for Lily's art studio and Emma's growing collection of books and leadership awards. Emma had been elected student council president at her school, where she championed programs for students who had experienced trauma. Her teacher described her as having an old soul and remarkable empathy for others who were struggling. She had also started a peer mentoring program that paired older students with younger ones who needed extra support. Lily had received a scholarship to attend a prestigious art camp the previous summer, where her paintings had been displayed in a gallery show. Her artwork had evolved from simple drawings into complex pieces that explored themes of family, healing, and hope. Several of her paintings had been sold, with the proceeds going to support other children in foster care. The relationship between the twins had matured as they grew older. While they remained extremely close, they had developed their own individual interests and friendships. Emma was drawn to debate team and student government, while Lily preferred art classes and quiet afternoons spent reading. Their different personalities complemented each other beautifully. Rebecca's mental health had remained stable for years, though she continued her therapy and medication regimen religiously. She had learned to recognize early warning signs of stress and had developed healthy coping strategies that prevented small setbacks from becoming major crises. Her relationship with Dr. Williams had evolved into a professional collaboration, with Rebecca sometimes consulting on cases involving other families. The Martinez family had become honorary grandparents to Emma and Lily, attending school events, birthday parties, and holiday celebrations. Maria Martinez often joked that she had gained 2 granddaughters without having to raise them through the difficult teenage years. The families spent every holiday together and took annual vacation trips to a lake house that had been donated by a local charity. Detective Rodriguez, now Captain Rodriguez, had stayed in touch with the family over the years. He attended their anniversary celebration each year and often used their story as an example of how the system could work when everyone involved was committed to doing what was best for children. He had implemented new protocols in his department for handling cases involving mental health crises. Sarah Martinez, the social worker who had discovered the twins, had been promoted to supervisor, but still carried a reduced caseload so she could maintain her relationship with special families like the Thompsons. She considered their success story one of the most rewarding experiences of her career, and often referred to it when training new social workers. The story of Emma and Lily's rescue and recovery had been documented in a book written by a local journalist, with all proceeds going to fund mental health services for families in crisis. Rebecca had initially been hesitant about sharing their story so publicly, but the girls had convinced her that their experience could help other children who were suffering in silence. As the family gathered for their annual second birthday celebration, surrounded by friends and extended family members who had supported them through their journey, Rebecca felt overwhelmed with gratitude for the second chance they had all been given. The guest list included doctors, social workers, teachers, neighbors, and friends who had played roles in their healing process. Emma stood up to make a toast, as had become tradition at these gatherings. She thanked everyone for their love and support, But her words were directed primarily at her mother and sister. She spoke about how their experience had taught her that families come in many forms, and that the strongest bonds are forged through surviving difficulties together. Lily presented a special painting she had created for the occasion. It showed their apartment building from 5 years ago, but instead of looking dark and frightening, it was surrounded by light and filled with people reaching out to help. At the center of the painting were 3 figures holding hands: herself, Emma, and their mother, no longer alone but surrounded by a community of care. Rebecca wiped away tears as she looked around the room at all the people who had refused to give up on her family when giving up would have been easier. She thought about the mother she had been 5 years ago, lost in her illness and unable to protect her children, and marveled at how far they had all come. The twins were excited about starting high school the following year and had big dreams for their futures. Emma wanted to become a lawyer specializing in children's rights, while Lily hoped to use her art to raise awareness about social issues. Both girls planned to continue their advocacy work and had already been invited to speak at several conferences about trauma recovery and family reunification. As the celebration continued into the evening, Rebecca knew that their story was far from over. There would undoubtedly be challenges ahead as the girls navigated their teenage years and eventually left home to pursue their own dreams. But she was confident that the foundation of love, trust, and resilience they had built together would sustain them through whatever came next. The little girls who had once been found barely clinging to life in a cold, empty apartment had grown into remarkable young women who understood the power of hope, the importance of community, and the healing that was possible when people refused to give up on each other. Their story had become a testament to the human capacity for recovery and the extraordinary things that could happen when the right support systems came together at the right time.